What's up, everyone? Today on the DNVR Rockies podcast, we are talking payroll. Can the Rockies ever get to a point where they can compete with teams like the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, all postseason teams? We've got a special guest in-house today to talk about that. That's coming up next on the DNVR Rockies podcast. Everyone, happy Monday. It is another week. We are rocking and rolling here in the DNVR studios. Christian Saez on the show. We're joined by a very special guest today. Back in Colorado after taking some time to go visit the Royals in Kansas City. Kevin Henry, writer with Just Baseball. Kevin, welcome. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Glad to be back, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. First of all, you spent some time out in Kansas City covering the Royals and their improbable run to the postseason. I want to ask you before we get going on some of the Rockies stuff, how was it hanging out in Kansas City, getting to see all the sights and sounds and some postseason baseball out there?
You know, it's fantastic. I mean, the Royals, first time to have a home postseason game since the 2015 World Series. So, Kansas City was jacked up for it. And it was really good to walk into Kauffman Stadium and just have that playoff environment that you knew had not had. A buddy of mine is a season ticket holder there and caught up with him before the game. And, of course, he went to both those games. And, yeah, he just said this energy was something we've been waiting to come back here. Of course, right across the parking lot is Arrowhead. So always plenty of energy over there. But the Royals have kind of been in the shadows, and it was nice to see them break out this year and do it.
Well, Kansas City is a huge sporting city, which is kind of funny because you wouldn't expect that normally, for a place out there, kind of out in the boonies. But that place lives and breathes their sports, and so to have the Royals back in the postseason, obviously it didn't work out the way that they wanted to, but that was huge, And for Kansas City, they did it after an improbable, run to the postseason, losing 100 plus games last year. And I've talked to you about this on the show before, the comparison between the Rockies and the Royals. Is there any comparison that we can make there? And so that's kind of our topic of the show today is seeing, how do the Rockies match up with postseason teams that we see out there today? The Royals not being a postseason team anymore, but we look at the payrolls of the remaining teams, the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Guardians. 3 out of those 4 teams are top 5 payrolls in Major League Baseball. The Rockies had a payroll this year of $147 million, so which is about half of what those remaining teams are. So it brings up the question to me of can the Rockies ever have a hope of competing against teams with payrolls like that? I don't think that this is going to ever be a situation where the Rockies go out and put $350 million payroll out there on the table. So we're kind of having to look at it from a back-end standpoint of how do the Rockies become competitive without a $300 million a year payroll, and what kind of moves do they have to make? So I'll start by asking you the question of, is there a world in which the Rockies can build a competitive roster with the payroll that they have, looking at around $150 million a year? Is there a world in which they can do that to compete against teams like the Mets, the Yankees, and the Dodgers?
I think there's a world where it can happen because I think baseball is so cyclical, I should say.
Yeah.
Last year you see the Rangers and the Diamondbacks get to the World Series. And, of course, this year, neither one even made the postseason. So I think it's possible for it to happen. But, I've had so many people, whenever they found out I was from Denver and I was there covering the Royals, we came up with the whole Royals-Rockies talk. And, and 2 things jumped out at me from those conversations. Number one, as you mentioned, Colorado does spend money. I think that's a misnomer around the league. It's just it hasn't been spent wisely. And I think that's the biggest problem when you see the Chris Bryant contract, of course, what you and I have talked about. And, even what they paid Charlie Blackmon last year for his, retirement tour as it ends up. It was still overpriced, let's be honest. But the Royals, one of the things, if you really look at how they built themselves this year, and you can even go down to the Tigers, you could even go down the Guardians, you go down to any of those AL Central teams that kind of made it into the postseason, is the fact that they built it around pitching. And the Royals got Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo, both to come from San Diego to Kansas City on free agent contracts. And that right there, I think, is the differentiator, because where are you going to find these free agent pitchers who are going to want to pitch in Colorado without paying them an exorbitant amount of money to make that happen? And
Yeah.
so I think that's the first hurdle that has to be bypassed if the Rockies are ever going to get to where the Royals, Tigers, and Guardians are now.
Well, and I did a show a couple weeks ago, kind of recapping the season and looking at, what are our areas of improvement. And I actually, was saying, of course, pitching needs to be, it's always kind of an area of improvement for the Rockies, even when they're a competitive team. I think offensively, that was surprising to a lot of people how much their offense, the Rockies' offense, needs to grow this year, this upcoming season, if they want to be competitive. But the Guardians, going back to the whole payroll thing, the Guardians are a perfect example of that. Of a team that has been able to build a competitive roster that can get them to the AL Championship Series. The Guardians are 23rd in spending this year in Major League Baseball. They've got $106 million payroll. To compare that to the Mets, who are first in payroll this year with $317 million. I mean, that's a $200 million plus deficit, that the Guardians are rolling out there versus the Mets. So you said it. Baseball is a sport that, like, you can get away with not spending as much, but you have to be in the back end of that, you have to be very precise about how you go about approaching an offseason or approaching a trade deadline or approaching whatever that looks like to make competitive moves. And so, we start to look at where the Rockies need to make adjustments. They've got to obviously get a consistent starting pitching rotation. And I wanted to bring up the question of what the Rockies are planning to do with Senzatella, Herman Marquez, even Kyle Freeland, although Kyle Freeland, I think, is still kind of in a place where he could have a couple really highly competitive seasons left under his belt. I don't know what we're going to get out of Senzatella. I don't know what we're going to get out of Herman Marquez, just given the injuries that both of them are coming back off of. I actually think starting pitching is an area where the Rockies might need to really make some commitments to some veterans or even some young guys, whatever that looks like. I don't know if they've got their starting pitching figured out. And you could see some payroll end up going into the starting pitching side of things if you want to get competitive this next year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with how quickly are those guys down on the farm, starting with Chase Dollander, how quickly are they going to be ready to take things over?
Yeah.
Another thing about Kansas City and just trying to bring it all together here a little bit is that, Cole Reagans is obviously the ace of that team. And the Royals made a trade with the Rangers to get Cole Reagans. And Texas still regrets that, I think, to this day. You talk to any Rangers fan, and they hate that they traded a little bit of Aroldis Chapman for Cole Reagans, but they got the World Series ring, so take it with a grain of salt. But are the Rockies going to be able to find that young pitcher? We thought Herman Marquez was that, and he was for a while whenever they got him in that Rays trade. But who's that next guy that they're going to find to bring in? Because, again, spending on free agent pitching is one thing. But really, I think whenever it comes to the Rockies, you're going to have to grow a lot of these guys or make those trades to bring them into the system. And so I think for the Rockies, you've got to see how quickly these young guys going to fit in. And you're right. We don't know. Senzatella and Marquez are two huge question marks. And are Gomber or, Quantrill going to be around next year? I mean, a lot of these veteran faces, there's question marks around. I'd say Kyle's probably the one that's got the most solid footing of any of them.
Yeah. And even Kyle has shown some up and down, he's been, I would say, more consistent across his recent career than some of the other pitchers. But, he's had some ups and downs. Ryan Feltner had a good end of his year, but it's like, where the Rockies going to go with Feltner and how does that play out. So yeah, there's a lot of questions right now around that starting rotation. The bullpen, I think, is a place where maybe you're not going to be spending a lot of money. There's going to be payrolls that come out of the bullpen, but you're still growing so many of those young guys, and you hope that this is just one of those kind of seasons where some of those young guys find their rhythm at a cheap level pretty quickly. But if you transition over to the offense, the Rockies offense, there was a lot of there's a lot of struggles this last year offensively, and there's some guys with some good contracts already. Tovar, being one of them, Ryan McMahon, that kind of thing. But you also have some guys that are growing into their spots on the field and offensively. How do you think the Rockies are approaching building that offense? Do you think they go for a veteran presence, like maybe even like a Paul Goldschmidt, or who's on the free agent market this season? Do you think the Rockies might be in the market for a guy like that to kind of help fill the gap, let's say, with where Chris Bryant was expected to be, offensively?
Well, and so many of the small market teams that do well have that one guy in the lineup who strikes fear in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a Jose Ramirez, they've got a Bobby Witt Jr. They've got these guys. There isn't that on the Colorado roster now. Granted, Brenton Doyle had a fantastic year. Tovar definitely made progression, but I don't think pitchers are nervous whenever they come to the plate per se. In the same level. So I think you've got to find that guy that strikes fear. We always thought it was going to be Chris Bryant. It still hasn't been. So yeah, a Goldschmidt, somebody that has that reputation and potentially could turn Coors Field into that place where he perhaps could turn a career around, perhaps have one or two more good years, but there's always that flip side that you're going to get a Daniel Murphy. That things are going to happen, that it's just all looks like it's going to line up. But I think the Rockies have to find that one guy in the lineup who's always going to be there, and it's going to be the one guy pitchers don't want to face.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. We were talking about it a little bit, during the lead up to the off season for the Rockies about, kind of playing hypothetical, like what kind of moves are we looking to make this off season? And I've talked about it before. I've given my take on that. I feel like the Rockies could move forward from Cal Quantrill or a Brendan Rodgers, something like that. But do you see a specific position on the field in which you feel like the Rockies will attack aggressively in this offseason? If there's going to be a spot on the field that you think there could be some movement, do you see a specific position like that, or do you think they're just going to maybe take whatever comes their way?
I think a lot of it will have to do, to be perfectly honest, with how they feel about Bryant heading into the year.
Yeah.
And I think that they could spend money at a DH position and find that one guy who could be a slugger every day. But outside of that, if they feel like Chris is going to come back and actually make an impact, I don't feel like that they're going to spend at one position. I think you'll see some small incremental changes around, but really you look at that lineup and how it ended on, closing day and transitioning over to next year. There's a lot of guys already in place.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, Rodgers could be a guy who's on the move. I think they can make some changes in the rotation. I certainly think DH could be upgraded, but at the same time, they've got to leave a place open for Bryant if they feel like that he can actually come back and contribute.
Well, we had talked about Bryant and his situation with Colorado the last time you were on the show. And since then I had Thomas Harding on the show talking about his article with about Chris Bryant. And he had made some connections between how Chris Bryant's back surgeon is the same back surgeon that worked with Clayton Kershaw. Well, Kershaw is also, still struggling to recover from his back injuries, not on the roster right now, or not listed as an active on the roster for the Dodgers in the postseason. And there's a lot of questions on, will Clayton Kershaw ever get back to true form? So I think, given that was kind of the positive that Chris Bryant was leaning on for a little bit, at least towards the end, was like, hey, I'm seeing a really good back surgeon, and there's been some positive cases that he's had in similar situations. I still think there's a huge question mark on where Chris Bryant is going to fit in. I mean, and so if there's even a position for him, and we've said this before, I mean, do the Rockies go with a 39-man roster in the future where they just leave Chris Bryant on because they're not going to get value for him from any other team. You just leave that kind of spot for Chris Bryant on the team, and you just kind of have him there as a pinch hitter if you need him in those positions. But the Chris Bryant contract from financially obviously looms heavy, but it's not going to be a contract they can get rid of. That money's guaranteed. So
Right.
you're essentially saying, is there another position or is there another person that we can build on top of that Chris Bryant contract? Because the Rockies they're not going to be spending, on the lower end of the spectrum for MLB teams. They're going to still have a high payroll, just given some of the commitments they've already made. So I wouldn't necessarily say that they're going to be a team like the A's or the White Sox or the Guardians that just aren't spending very much money at all. Like, they're going to still spend a good chunk of money. It's just a matter of how do you approach that in a competitive way.
Yeah, it really is spending it wisely.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the Rockies have had trouble in the past few years, going back to the Ian Desmond decision. I think that really has set up a bunch of dominoes. Desmond, Murphy, Bryant, all these different ones that you can look back on and just say it didn't turn out the way they thought they were going to, but there was a lot of money sunk into those contracts. So I absolutely think that you've got to be sure if you're going, I could see them maybe getting one guy that's going to be kind of one of those, oh, okay. I know somebody popped on a minute ago and said Arenado would tell Goldschmidt to stay far away from, from the Rockies. I get that completely. And it's very possible. But at the same time, Goldschmidt's also a guy that he's looking for somewhere to extend his career. And if he's not going to get on with an Arizona, if there's not going to be a reunion tour there, which I think is very possible, I think Houston is a possibility, knowing that they're trying to find something at first base. And those would certainly be more appealing for him, thinking he's got a bigger chance at winning a championship, which he's never had. But, I really think that you've got to look at, they're going to have one guy that they'll spend some money on this offseason. That's my prediction. One guy. Yeah. The rest of it's going to be kind of smaller contracts going out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I said it on our show last week, the Rockies, when they extended Bud Black, I was saying, okay, Rockies are essentially saying this isn't, Bud Black's fault. So that means they've got to fix some issues with the team. You've got to focus on how do we have an active offseason? How do we get our team set up in a position where you're saying the manager is set in place and that part's fine. Then we've got to fix the holes on the other side. And so this has to be an active offseason for the Rockies. They've got to be making moves. And it does go to show that, when you see teams like the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, they're obviously playing successful baseball right now, and they're making it deep into the postseason. But there's a target on their back because you spend so much money. If the Dodgers had gotten bounced in the first round, I had said it last week. I'm like, is this a situation where Dave Roberts is on the hot seat? Because when you have a team with that much money, that much payroll, that much investment, you've got to have results. So the flip side of that is, these teams that are spending this insane amount of money, they've got to have results. And so far, they're playing pretty well.
Well, and let's not forget the Mets barely got in. They needed that tiebreaker in Atlanta to get in. So this could have been a whole different story had they not gotten hot at the end of the year and won that tiebreaker as well. But you're right. Whenever it comes to the Dodgers, if you're going to spend that much, had the Padres beaten them, then absolutely. I think Roberts' job would be questioned right now. I think a lot of things that they're doing would be questioned right now. But the Dodgers were also smart. Let's be honest, Teoscar Hernandez is going to be one of the greatest prove-it deals out there. Yeah. He's going to turn into something, but it was attractive for him to go to LA. Yeah. There's a lot of places he could have done a prove-it deal, but if you can do it in LA, surrounded by all those stars, it makes a world of difference.
Well, heck, even Pete Alonso, there was conversation on whether or not that wild card game, or that was going to be his last at bat as a Met, and then he hits that home run, and you're like, oh my gosh, all right, well, Pete Alonso might be a forever Met, and so the playoffs can do crazy things in different situations, and we've seen some fireworks out there, and hopefully the excitement continues. Kevin, thank you again for taking the time to chat with us. I know you're going to be doing a lot of writing this postseason and offseason. So tell people where they can find you and where they can follow your work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Justbaseball.com. Be writing some things about teams like the Cardinals, also following the postseason as well, throwing out some ideas on Just how far are we going to see a Subway Series? I'm not sure any of us on this side of the Mississippi River want to see that, but we'll find out. So,
oh yeah,
anyway,
we will
thanks for
definitely
having me
find
on,
out.
man.
Yeah, I always enjoy having you on. You have great insight, and we'll have to have you on a couple more times as this off season continues. But yeah, good luck, and thanks again, Kevin.
Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
All right, just baseball. We're going to take a quick break. After the break, though, I want to talk a little bit about some comments that Dave Roberts made after the series against the Padres. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But real quick, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at UC Health, because this season, Coach Prime wants to help you and other Coloradans live your healthiest lives through the Ready, Set, Co challenge. The goal is to get Colorado back to its rightful place as the healthiest state in the country, which is always a shock to me that we are not the healthiest state in the country. We are some healthy people out here in Colorado. I got to ask you, Yahir, if your mic is on, have you been doing some healthy things this fall? Have you been taking some healthy steps, getting your early morning walks in?
I have. Still waking up early, still trying to hit the gym, but I am trying to get better sleep, just like Coach Prime said.
Just like Coach Prime said, you gotta combine nutrition, sleep, exercise, all of the good stuff. That is how you get and get into a good space so you live your healthiest life with the Ready, Set, Co initiative. So make those little changes that add up and live your healthiest life. If you want to join UC Health's Ready, Set, Co challenge, click the link in the show notes of this podcast or go to uchealth.org/Ready, Set, Co, spelled C-O. Excuse me. All right, we're rolling here. Got to give a shout out to our friends over at Toyota, because Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR and the Rockies. And right now, I just got to say that I am still in love with my Toyota Highlander. It's a love story here. A 2007 Toyota Highlander, 250,000 miles. It is still kicking, and I just replaced the brakes on it myself. It is truly the best. It is the premier vehicle out there. There is no match for a good Toyota. So head out to your Toyota stores, check out all the different options that they have. They've got hybrids, they've got trucks, they've got off-roading cars, they've got even nice sedans. The Toyota Camry, one of my favorite vehicles. I wish that I lived in a place where a Toyota Camry would be more of my type of car here. I gotta have the four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive cars in Colorado, but Toyota Camrys are still incredible cars. So be sure to visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation, Arapahoe, and Centennial. Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR and the Rockies. All right, it's Hot Take Monday, everyone. So I wanted to share this quote from Dave Roberts and then give kind of a hot take on this, because after the series, we all know there was some heated tension between the Dodgers and the Padres. And Dave Roberts had came out, saying during the series that Manny Machado was throwing the baseball over towards the Dodgers dugout, and that was, egregious, and that he was doing that intentionally. After the series ended and the Dodgers beat the Padres, Dodgers manager Dave Roberts admitted that he used Manny Machado's drama as a diversion for his club versus the Padres. He says, quote, "As a manager, you never want to make it about you, but I just felt in that situation, if we could take it off our guys a bit, Manny and I have a good relationship, I would take him any day." I don't really know what that means, but whatever. But I don't think the diversion was a bad thing for our guys, and they responded by having my back. Here's my hot take to that, because a lot of people were getting kind of upset on Twitter and stuff, saying like, this is so Dodgers, why would they, of course, it's typical that they would try to, I don't know, create this narrative and whatever. Here's my hot take. I actually think that was totally normal, very much normal coaching by Dave Roberts. Yeah, it kind of goes in line with the Dodgers, and sure, and and I think it's easy to hate the Dodgers in anything that they do. But if you look at sports in general, and I'm going to go back and use the Nuggets as an example. When the Nuggets won the championship, Michael Malone numerous times took the narrative of, the national media not paying attention to Denver or not paying attention to the Nuggets, and, kind of just everyone, they were the little brother of the NBA. They were the small cowpoke out here in Colorado. And he took that and he used that as motivation for the Nuggets, and it led to a championship. So I would say that Dave Roberts, as a manager, so much so, managing, or so often managing, isn't just about going out there calling pitches and putting a good lineup together and whatever. It's about what happens behind the scenes in the locker room with your guys, getting your team back on track, especially for a team like the Dodgers that has such a big target on their back. It's really important for a manager to keep his team organized and keep them in focus and in line as they continue. And I would actually say that this is totally normal. Coach Prime, for example, also does this every single time the Buffs play. Like, this is not new to me, that a coach will take some sort of storyline and turn it into a narrative to help motivate his team. And yeah, it caused some frustration for the fans, and people were getting upset and whatnot. But I don't know, man. Like, I just think that's just normal baseball. That's baseball for you. That's sports in general. I think it didn't help that Ken Rosenthal came out with that article about the Padres, and people were getting upset that people thought they were villainizing the Padres and whatever. But again, I just think that's sports. That's the way sports goes. So I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue with the Dodgers because they're the Dodgers, but I don't have an issue with Dave Roberts, doing that in that situation. So I just wanted to throw that out there. A little hot take Monday. It might, some people might disagree with me, but I don't know. I think that's coaching for you. Want to change gears here though, because after the Padres got eliminated, now that happened over the weekend. So the last time I talked to you guys was on Friday. Padres got eliminated. I believe it was Friday night or Saturday or something like that. I don't remember what day it was. But that means that there are still 5 teams remaining in Major League Baseball that have never won a World Series. And after the Padres got eliminated, that streak will continue for all 5 of those teams. I sent a photo of this. We can pull up that photo of those 5 teams. The Rockies are one of them, but it's the Mariners, Padres, Rays, Brewers, and Rockies. So it brings up the question, and I want you guys to think about this here for a moment while I take a quick drink. Who's going to be the first team out of these teams to win a World Series? I think the Mariners got kind of close this year. They were not close to winning a World Series, but they were moving quickly and kind of fell apart there at the end. The Padres, obviously. The Brewers were in the playoffs. Rockies got a long way to go. But there are some teams that, I think definitely have a chance in the coming years to be a World Series team. If I had to put my bet on who's going to be the team that wins the World Series first, I'd love to say the Padres, because the Padres have been so close. And I think if they had beaten the Dodgers, the Dodgers are the best team in baseball. If they had beaten the Dodgers, they would have had a decent run to getting to the World Series, taking on the Mets. But I don't know. It could be an interesting run. If the Rockies ever got to a position where they could get to the postseason, I mean, I'm obviously going to say the Rockies, but the Rockies got a long way to go before we get to that spot. So I think the Mariners might surprise people next year, though. The Mariners have some room to grow this offseason, because their pitching is the best pitching in baseball, but their hitting just hasn't been able to pick it up. But the Mariners just have been a team that has, and I grew up in Seattle, so I can speak from a Mariners perspective here for a little bit. The Mariners have let down the fans over and over and over, year after year. So I just have a hard time giving any faith to the Mariners and their fan base and their team. The Rays, that's not going to happen probably anytime soon. Brewers could be right in there. Get Christian Yelich back and healthy again. Brewers could be a dominant team, next year. And the Brewers are in a decent division. They could be a team that puts up a good fight. But I do think it's going to be between the Padres and the Mariners next year. If the Mariners can figure out a way to get their hitting back in order, the Mariners could be a threat. Padres right in there as well. It is crazy to me, though, that there are still 5 teams in baseball, given how long some of these teams have played, too, that have never won a World Series. It just speaks to Major League Baseball and how challenging it is to win a World Series. I mean, look at the Dodgers. Yeah, they won during that asterisk COVID season. Sure, they won a World Series then, but besides that, like they just haven't had the success, long term getting through the postseason. It's like first round, the Dodgers have been bumped every single year. And man, I was ready for that to happen again. I'm so bummed that they got through the Padres. I was really hoping that was going to be the Padres' chance, but interesting little topic to think about. Hey, when we come back, though, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about, we've talked about it before, but I want to talk a little bit about teams advancing to the championship series after having a bye week. We had said before, well, teams have, over the last couple of years, struggled after they've had a bye to get hot, those teams that clinched the division. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I think this year it's proving that it's a good thing. And we're going to break that down here in just a moment. But before we do that, I got to give a shout out to our friends over at ZBiotic, because at ZBiotic, it makes it more enjoyable to go out and let loose a little bit, have some fun, drink responsibly with your friends, because ZBiotics has this new thing called pre-alcohol, where basically it just helps you bounce back quicker the next day. So when you're going out and drinking with friends, you're having a good time, you can drink some pre-alcohol, ZBiotics pre-alcohol before you go out. And you know that you're going to be able to bounce back quicker the next day, the next morning. And especially for me, like as I get older, it's become harder and harder to feel like I'm getting back into the swing of things in the next day or two. And so with ZBiotics pre-alcohol, it's the first genetically engineered prebiotic invented by PhD scientists to tackle that next morning, the rough mornings after drinking. So be sure to check out ZBiotics. Make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best the next day. Make the most out of the rest of your fall. Stock up on pre-alcohol now. Head over to zbiotics.com/DNVR Rockies to get 15% off your first order. They are backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you are unsatisfied for any reason, they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. Remember, that's zbiotics.com/DNVR Rockies to get 15% off your first order. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and for sponsoring our good times. Also, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Shady Rays. I've actually got some Shady Rays here for us today. Gonna wear our Shady Rays the remainder of our podcast, but Shady Rays is an incredible sunglasses. They're the best in the business. They're affordable, they're effective. They do a great job of not only just blocking the sunlight, which is what sunglasses are for, but they look stylish. They're really durable. They work really well. Like I go fishing with my Shady Rays all the time. I've dropped them in the water. I've hit sticks up against them, and they're still crushing it for me. So you got to check out our friends over at Shady Rays. And right now, exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DNVR for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades that are rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, let's get back into it. We are rolling here on this Monday. Interesting little note here, because I had talked about this before on the show, talking about how, teams over the last couple of years that we've had this new playoff format, and, we've had new wild card series and all of that kind of stuff. Teams with a bye have historically struggled to get hot in these last postseasons. And this year, 3 out of 4 teams that won their division and had a bye going into the postseason ended up making it to the championship series. That's the Yankees, the Guardians, and the Dodgers. So I think we can dispel the argument that it's not a good thing to have a bye week, because you do have usually around 5 days off for these teams before they play another game. Having 5 days off of rest is a good thing. Yes, teams get on a roll, and it sucks sometimes to it's hard to take just 5 days off after a 162 game year of just consecutive nonstop season. But I would make the argument that, especially with pitching, having that 5 days off is extremely important when it comes to pitching, because you've got guys that their arms are hanging on by a thread, and literally their tendons are just holding on by a thread. And when you take those 5 days off, you're still throwing, you're still going through routines, but it gives you a chance to kind of slow down and just have have that recovery that you would never get a chance to have throughout the season. Look at what happened last night with Kodai Senga for the Mets, who has not thrown all season long, hasn't gotten into his rhythm, hasn't really been able to fully like recover and get his arm to a place that he needs to be. It was only his second or third day pitching, and he comes out and just falls apart, and that's how difficult pitching can be sometimes at this level. So I think, especially from a pitching perspective, that 5 days of rest time is huge for these teams. And the Yankees, Guardians, and Dodgers basically just have a head start to their postseason. I look at a team like the Mets that is just like, they have been playing nonstop, literally, of like intense, draining, emotionally physical baseball for the past month. And they've got to go now play the Dodgers. And then even if they somehow miraculously get through the Dodgers, then they've got a World Series coming up that's going to be huge, So it's just it's a crazy thing, baseball. And I've talked to so many of the coaches about, what it's like getting some of these young guys transitioned, young college players transitioned into playing professional baseball. And their biggest thing they always say is like the hardest part of transitioning college players into professional is getting the schedule switched over, saying like, hey, you can go from having 2 or 3 days off a week, sometimes in college to like, you don't ever get days off when you're playing professional baseball. So when you get a 5-day stretch where you can still, yes, play, do simulated games, but you give your body a break, that's huge. That is absolutely huge. So can we dispel the argument right here, right now, that, like the bye week is bad for baseball or whatever? No, it's a good thing. It's going to stick around for a long time. Also, talking about the Mets and the Dodgers, what the hell happened in LA yesterday? That was a wild game, and before we could talk about this game, we got to go back to the Padres Dodgers game because, like I said, my show was before that, so I haven't had a chance to like break down that game. But my biggest takeaway from the game between the Dodgers and the Padres, besides the fact that the Dodgers won and whatever, blah, 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 yay, Dodgers. Can we just all acknowledge how freaking weird that celebration was between Kike Hernandez and Gavin Lux after Kike Hernandez hit the home run to start things off? Look at that. What are we doing here? I know we freeze framed that. And the jokes on Twitter were just incredible. I'm not going to say those over the air, but you can go on Twitter and find plenty of good jokes about that. But my biggest thing about this is like, okay, weird, whatever. Like baseball players do. This is a sport where guys slap each other's butts, and it's just a normal thing. So like, whatever. Where I want to know what led up to this is, how did that conversation go with Kike Hernandez before he hit the home run? Did he, during like a warm-ups or something, go up to Gavin Lux and say, you know what, man? You know what we're going to do? If I hit a home run or if I score, we're going to celebrate. I'm just going to come up to you and I'm going to hip thrust into you. And it's just going to be a vibe. And we're going to just be loving it. Like, what in the world led up to that? So I just had to throw that out there because I'm like, I've had some pretty weird celebrations that I've been a part of in my baseball career. Never that. That one's about as weird as it gets. I don't know. Are we going to see it again? Are we going to see the little hip bump again throughout the postseason? I don't know. Maybe that was a one-time thing. Maybe it's going to be the story of the postseason for the Dodgers. The Mets have grimace. The Dodgers have weird hip celebrations. I don't know. I've never seen that in baseball before. Had to point that out there. The Dodgers' whole series has just been, or whole postseason has just been weird. Weird in so many ways. You've got Fox Sports that's just jamming Shohei Ohtani content onto our screens nonstop. Have you guys seen? Yeah, like this. Look on your screen here. Have you seen this little, Shohei Ohtani about to hit graphic that they keep showing? 3 batters away. Like, I get that he's the greatest player in all baseball, but you're going to make people hate him. Like, Shohei Ohtani is special, but he's not, like, I understand. Here's where I differentiate this. I understand if Shohei Ohtani is, 59 home runs and 60 stolen bases, and you're waiting for his 60th home run, and any at bat could be his 60th home run. I understand in those situations saying, okay, he could get number 60 in 3 at bats, like 3 at bats away or 3 batters away. But he's not doing anything special right now. He's just playing baseball. It's just normal stuff. So I look at that and I'm like, man, you're going to make people hate Shohei Ohtani. Like, sure, the Dodgers fans love him, but the rest of the world is like, we get it. Shohei's really good. He's fun to watch, but I don't know. He also kind of sucked in the beginning of the postseason. He got hot there towards the end. He's been good with runners in scoring position, which I guess that's all that matters. But he had like that 1 home run, and then he went hitless for like 13 at bats or something like that. So can we just like chill out a little bit with the whole Shohei Ohtani stuff? Like, we get it. He's incredible, but
We should put it up on every Rockies game.
every single Rockies game, just 3 batters away. I'll start putting tweets out. Shohei Ohtani bats in 4 hours and 36 minutes. It's just like we're going too far with this, guys. Like, let's chill out a little bit. Give Shohei his room. Let him just do his thing. I don't know. It'll be good. I was talking a little bit with some people about the Subway Series and if there was a potential for Mets and Yankees and what that could look like for baseball. And I understand. There's a world in which a Mets versus Yankees from a rivalry standpoint could be a lot of fun. But I think from a rating standpoint, I actually don't really love the idea of doing a Subway Series for the World Series. I feel like it's just bad for ratings when it and for the rest of baseball. And Kevin kind of said it at the beginning of the show. People in New York will enjoy this. They would enjoy that. But everywhere else, no one really cares about the Mets and the Yankees. We just want the best possible matchup. And who knows? That could be incredible baseball. But I do think the Mets have an expiration date. Maybe they showed it a little bit last night. Maybe I'm just a hater. I mean, I have nothing against the Mets. I just think their time is going to come. But maybe they have an expiration date. And I think a Yankees-Dodgers matchup in conversation of what is better for baseball as a whole, a Yankees-Dodgers matchup is significantly bigger from a rating standpoint than a Yankees-Mets matchup. And I think you have to also take into consideration those are the two biggest fan bases in all of baseball, the Dodgers and the Yankees. You would add pretty much the entire country of Japan into that fan base for Shohei Ohtani. And Mexico. Mexico for... Dodgers. Gotcha. So for Dodgers, Dodgers fans, in Mexico. Just in general, you also have to realize this is that's a cultural game. Like, yes, the Mets are a cultural team, the Yankees are a cultural team, but the Yankees are the New York Yankees. The Dodgers are the West Coast version of that. It's LA versus New York. It's the two most prominent sporting logos, I would argue, in the history of sports. Maybe maybe the Lakers are kind of thrown in there too. Coast versus coast, that's it's just the biggest storyline in all of sports. So Mets versus Dodgers, or Yankees versus Dodgers, I should say. Also the two most hated franchises, in my opinion, unless you're a Dodgers and Yankees fan, the two most hated franchises in all of sports. So Subway Series could be cool. God forbid the Cleveland Guardians get in, and nothing against the Guardians, but that's just bad baseball for anyone who isn't living in Cleveland. But I'm on board with a Dodgers-Yankees World Series matchup. That could be a lot of fun. We're gonna talk a little bit about some of these upcoming games. Talk a little bit about which team has had the easiest run to the World Series. We're gonna talk about that after this last break. But I want to share some information about some upcoming events right now, because we do have some events that are around the corner. They're going to be a lot of fun. Tomorrow, first one, DNVR Nuggets. Coming up, we got a preseason watch party and tarot card reading. That's fascinating. Do we know why we have a tarot card reading for the preseason party? Is that was there a reason behind that? I I haven't seen the like backstory there of like why there's a tarot card reader going on at the Nuggets game. Is it like to just get good vibes for the preseason?
So it's actually tradition.
Okay. So it's something I'm not aware of.
No, it's actually, I think, the third year they do this, or fourth. And every year seems to be the correct prediction. This time, you can also get your own tarot card reading, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
It's optional. If you want to go do it, cool. You'll talk to Rihanna. But for the last 3 to 4 years, she's predicted the Nuggets championship run and all these things that's going on.
Wow.
It's been a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. So, yeah, check that out. That's tomorrow, October 15th at 6 p.m. preseason watch party and tarot card reading at the DNVR bar. Also on Thursday at 6 p.m., we got a Broncos watch party versus the Saints. That's going to be presented by Bet365. Broncos got a quick turnaround. They had a brutal loss yesterday against the Chargers, so we're a little bummed about that. Hopefully, they can bounce back quickly. Hopefully, maybe even Patrick Surtain might clear concussion protocols before then. I don't know if it's going to be enough time for him to clear those concussion protocols, but either way, it's going to be a lot of fun at the DNVR bar Thursday, 6 p.m. Broncos watch party versus the Saints. A little homecoming for Sean Payton going back to New Orleans. Also got to share some love with our friends over at Game Time. There has never been a better time to be a fan of anything, live sports, live concerts, theater, whatever it is. Game Time has you covered because with the Game Time app, it is easier and cheaper to find great seats than ever at any event at the click of a button. Game Time has this new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite events even easier. It filters through all of that extra fluff. You're not having to get stuck, trying to figure out like guessing like, wow, what does the view look like from this seat? Am I going to be sitting next to, some weird pole or something like that? Like, no, with Game Time Picks, you get 360 panoramic views from your seats where you can see on the app, you can actually see what the view is going to look like so that you don't get stuck next to that pesky pole or sitting behind the foul pole at a baseball game or whatever. It's the lowest price guarantee. So Game Time, they have you covered. And also the tickets get cheaper as you get closer to game time, literally game time. So check out our friends over at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account, redeem code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right. So Derek Jeter said that the Yankees have the easiest road to the World Series. And I'm not going to disagree with him, but I'd say Cleveland might have been close. Probably about even in my mind with the Yankees. Both are pretty easy if you look at where the Dodgers and the Mets had to go or will have to go to get to the World Series. If you look at the Yankees, they had a bye week to start. Then they played the Royals, which is a good team. I mean, none of these teams are bad teams. But, the Royals, a team that has just come off a 106-loss season, like they're still kind of rebuilding into that postseason. And then you play the Guardians, which, again, not an easy team. But if you're looking at it compared to the Dodgers, that's an easier team than the Dodgers or the Padres even, or even I would say the Phillies. So the Yankees do have a pretty easy route to the World Series. Cleveland right in there. They had a bye week to start. They played Detroit. Now they're playing the Yankees. Now I think the Yankees are a little bit more of a juggernaut than the Guardians are. So I do think the Yankees, I will agree with Derek Jeter, they probably have the easiest route to the postseason. But if you look at where the Dodgers and the Mets have had to go to get to the possible World Series run, the Dodgers had a bye week that started things off. Okay, that's fine. And then they had to play the Padres, a very much a World Series team in my mind. Then you have to play the Mets, who have been on the most momentous run that a team has been on in years in baseball, have everything in the world going right for them until last night. The Mets are not an easy team by any means. And they just will not die. They're like cockroaches. I don't expect this series to be over for the Mets just because they lost 9-0. Yeah, they had a bad game last night, but it's a 7-game series. Mets got to win tonight. But they're still going to be a tough team. But the Mets, talk about a team that has had a super hard run to the World Series or will have a super hard run to the World Series if they get there. They had the Brewers, a very good team, a team that very well could have won the division this year if they had a couple different things go their way and maybe had Yelich still in the lineup. They had to get through the Brewers in the wild card and were down to their last few outs, by the way, with Pete Alonso. The Phillies, won the division. They had to get through the Phillies, an incredible Phillies team that also could have been a World Series team. And now the Dodgers, the best team in baseball. So I don't know, man. The Mets have a pretty damn hard run to get to the World Series. They are still sloughing it out. I do not think they are going to be an easy get. I was listening to the broadcast last night, though, Joe Davis and John Schmaltz. And Schmaltz made a good point that it's not the end of the world. I know Mets fans will probably disagree with this, but it's not the end of the world that the Mets lost their game yesterday, because the Dodgers are probably going to have a bullpen game today. And so what that means is that, you lost a game in which you had to get through, a very challenging starting pitcher. Now you get to see a bullpen of pitchers today. This is a game where if the Mets can come out swinging, throw the first few punches, they could easily walk away from this 1-1. And I know that the Dodgers have had good bullpen games in the past, so it's not going to be a slouch game for the Mets either. But I think, if I'm the Mets, I'm putting my foot down hard on this game tonight. It's a 7-game series. If you can get things tied up going back to New York, you're feeling good. You're feeling good at 1-1. The Guardians and the Yankees, they kick things off today. I think they start at 4, if I remember, 4 Eastern time. I don't know let me see. I got a screenshot of it. 4:08 p.m. Eastern time. So just around 2 o'clock here in Denver is the Mets and the Dodgers. And then 7:38 p.m. Eastern time. So just around 5:30 Mountain time. It's Cleveland and New York. Interesting that they flip-flop those games. Usually the Mets and Dodgers have been the latter game, but it's going to be some crazy baseball this week. And I think these two teams are going to go at least to the 6th game. I would be shocked. I would even put money on the fact that these two teams are going to go to the 6th game. The Mets, like I said, even though they blew a pretty big game yesterday, they're like cockroaches. They will not die. And I think even though the Yankees are a very good juggernaut team, Cleveland has some life in them. They're not going to be an easy rollover team either. So this is going to be a series for these two squads that is hopefully some really fun baseball. And we've got 3 consecutive shows in a row. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday here on the DNVR Rockies pod. Tomorrow I'll be back, be doing a show after TDSP at 12:30. And then on Wednesday, got a 12:15 podcast back. So only 15 minutes later tomorrow on the show, doing TDSP as well tomorrow. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun this week. Then I'm heading out of town this weekend. So we're going to go short and sweet early in the week and enjoy the weekend. And hopefully we have some good baseball to talk about as we continue on. We're going to wrap things up, though, here on the show from the studio. I want to give a shout-out to our double producer crew here today in-house. You guys have been crushing it. I am Christian Saez. You guys can follow me on Twitter at CJJ You can follow the Rockies on Twitter at DNVR_Rockies as well. This has been the DNVR Rockies podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 12:30.
We all silly like the mayor.